everybody to the special March 29th meeting of the Salt Lake City Council. We have one item on our agenda regarding a resolution, the acquisition of navigation easements. Joel Nelson from the airport is here and will give us a briefing. Followed by Joel, we will ask the applicant to, or the party to come up to the table, and that group will have 20 minutes to present to the council, and so we will move forward to that point. Okay. Joel, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good morning. I just mentioned my name is Joel Nelson. I am the airport property and real estate manager for the Salt Lake City Department of Airports. In 2004, the Federal Aviation Administration offered to the Department of Airports one-time funding to expand and improve the Tooele Valley Airport. The airport took advantage of this opportunity, and in 2007, the FAA installed an instrument landing system which allows aircraft to make a precision runway approach from the north by providing both vertical and horizontal guidance to the runway. From the south, there would be a non-precision approach. Without the ILS, only a visual approach is used. The project was completed and the precision approach from the north began operating in 2008. As a condition to funding the project, the FAA regulations require the airport to protect the airspace, including height restrictions surrounding the runway. The proposed resolution is to authorize eminent domain proceedings for an navigation easement burdening certain parcels of property located south of the airport. The navigation easement prevents construction of any structure within the restricted airspace over the property. Although the airport pursued voluntary acquisition, we have been unable to acquire the easement. State law requires a resolution of the City Council to authorize eminent domain proceedings. State law also requires that before the Council votes on the proposed resolution, the Council must allow the property owners the opportunity to be heard at a public meeting on the proposed taking. The airport asked the Council to consider adopting the attached resolution with respect to the affected real property.
Thank you, Joel. So if we could have the property owners and their representation come to the table. Great, thank you. And then if you could just introduce yourselves, and then you will have 20 minutes to present.
Certainly, thank you very much. Let me start. My name is Robert Mansell. I'm legal counsel for the Koontz family. To my right is Mr. Neil Koontz, and to my left, Mr. Dick Koontz. And then also with us is Mrs. Barbara Koontz, who's sitting right here, and another brother, Keith Koontz. The Koontz family has not been opposed to the fact that certain actions need to be taken in order to protect, the operation of the runway. The problem they have is the process in which the city has undertaken to take by eminent domain the Koontz property. And to be perfectly candid, it's been an absolute abomination. This process started back in the process by the city to authorize the taking of eminent domain started back in 2007. There were several meetings which were held in order to give the Koontz family an opportunity to speak. One meeting, which they're given 2 minutes to speak. The state statute requires that at every meeting where the possibility of a resolution being passed to authorize the use of eminent domain, that the landowner be given an opportunity to speak. At the time in which this prior city council authorized the use of eminent domain in 2007, no opportunity was given to the Koontz family in order to make a presentation to discuss the issues. And on that basis, the 3rd District Court out in Tooele County recently rejected the city's efforts to take this property and dismissed the complaint. There's still proceedings going on with that, and it's undoubtedly going to go up on appeal. But we're here today because you don't have a valid eminent domain proceeding currently pending. But the problem with how it's going now is perpetuating the exact same problems that you had before. And we're going to be right back here again. We're going to be back before the court on another motion to dismiss. We think will be granted, and we're going to be back before you again. You can't short step the processes. You got to follow them. The eminent domain code is very, very clear. For instance, and I assume you received the materials we sent to you. Part of it, in order to file an eminent domain action, there must be reasonable negotiation with the landowner. It doesn't mean you have to actually come to a resolution, but at least an offer needs to be made to the landowner for the acquisition of the property. Right now, that hasn't been done. No effort has been made to value the avigation easement that's sought to be taken, and never has. Back in 2007, an offer of $281,000 was made to the Coons family by an appraiser, Stan Kraft, who then 6 months later changed his appraisal to $434,000, and that's what was used by the city to obtain immediate occupancy of the property. That has a valuation date back in 2007. Apparently, that same number is now being offered to the Coons family, for the taking of the avigation easement, an appraisal that's 12 years old. It just doesn't comport with the eminent domain code that requires that the valuation of the property be made concurrent at the time the complaint's going to be filed. You're going to have to file a new action. I assume the resolution isn't clear. I assume that's what the City Council is looking to do, is to authorize a new proceeding to pursue eminent domain. If all you're trying to do is retroactively approve what was done back in 2000, I think that's gross bad faith, and that's going to be rejected by the courts. So if you are taking condemnation action anew, you're going to have to get a new appraisal for the property. That has not been done. You're relying on a 12-year-old appraisal. Also, notice requirements have to be given. State statute is very clear that you have to provide the landowner with materials from the Ombudsman's office, materials that have been prearranged, and certain notice is set forth in the Utah Code, has to be provided to the landowner. That has not been done. Now, the exact same problems that permeated the prior action are just being perpetuated again. We think we're going to be right back again before the court on another motion to dismiss, and we're going to be back here. You have to give the landowner a meaningful opportunity to respond to this. If this action is just to try and retroactively approve what was done, there is no meaningful opportunity to speak. Due process rights are being violated here. Courts are very clear. It's well established that timely and adequate notice and an opportunity to be heard in a meaningful way are the very heart of procedural fairness. That procedural fairness has never been offered to the Coons family, and that's what we ask that this City Council do, that this City Council not approve the requested resolution, that the appropriate steps be taken in order to acquire the Coons property, and then we go through what should be done properly. With that, let me turn it over to Mr. Neil Coons.
My name's Neil Coons. I'm a licensed professional engineer. I own the property at 3808 North, 2125 West in Erta, Utah. I've been a licensed professional engineer for over 20 years in the state of Utah. So I am very familiar with looking at plans and specifications. So my attorneys outlined the legal aspects of this, but I wanted to address the concerns that we have about the engineering that has not been done properly on this project. And I first want to say that if anything was ever submitted to the city, whether it's a building permit or a housing permit, it would all have to be stamped by a licensed professional engineer. That's state law, that they have to do that. None of the drawings that I submitted in the packets, those are the drawings from the Department of Airports, have not followed state law or city procedures. The city would reject those if, as a professional engineer, I submitted them to the city, they'd be rejected. So, but I also wanted to just talk about, why we're here and what's needed. And I recognize the city needs a right of flight over my property. And it's not just an easement. Joel talks about it being a zoning easement for a height restriction. The height restriction is to allow a surface so that the planes can fly, a right of way, a right of flight, just like a roadway. For every roadway in your cities, you have a right of way. You have to have a right of flight. So with that, I recognize that for this airport, you need it. But we want, it's over the entire property, not just a portion of it that the city's asking for. So we believe that there's an error on that. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background. When we first purchased the property out in Tooele, my family wanted to move out and build the houses out there, develop the property. My father had talked to the Department of Airports and asked them if they were expanding this airport. Because when we moved out there, it was a small rural airport with a deficient runway. The runway was not one that they could land jets on. It was small. It was for a B-2 airplane. But it's a little propeller-driven plane, not jets. So when he got the response was that we're not going to expand the airport. So with that, we continued our development and went on. In the middle of our development, the airport said that they were going to expand. And so they went in and put a longer, wider runway in and developed it, put in a bigger, so that they could put in bigger aircraft and land bigger aircraft. And then also with the ILS system in, Instrument Landing System. This expanded all of the easements around the airport that they had not had before. It required all of their right-of-ways to increase. Think about going from a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road. And so our property, I mean, you're trying to condemn out in Tooele. So there's roughly Salt Lake City, across Salt Lake County, into Tooele County. Now, the area there, you guys have these maps. The area that they're trying to condemn is the area in yellow. But there are surfaces that are not shown on this map. And that's where the airport, the Department of Airport, has made some errors in this. That they're trying to get just this part. Just the part in yellow, the surface is within 35 feet of the ground. That means it doesn't even meet the setback requirements for the city. Standard setbacks are 35 feet from roadways. That's 35 feet from a right of flight, a right of way. And so, I mean, and it's just continually on. I mean, you can see, oh, I can't go back, or maybe I can go on. But the airport has testified to the court and certified that we're not within this building restriction line. And if you look further, that we're not in a transition zone. Now this next drawing, see these lines? We've got the lines across there. They cover my entire property. We're not just talking about that. The blue area is the same yellow area. So these transition surfaces are over my entire property. But again, those red areas are the transition surfaces shown on their ALP. Now this is information that's put out by the Department of Airports. Again, they're not stamped, but these are the certified drawings that they're using for development. And yet, then they come back, staff tells us that we're not in the transition surfaces and can't develop them. So either they don't know how to read the drawings or they are just being false in their information that they're given to you and to the court. And this one, it requires contain the right of flight. So it's not just a zoning issue, it's containing the right of flight, allowing them to fly. These surfaces are all eligible for FAA reimbursement. And I'm just showing you the design circulars. I've given you a copy of it. Now, my attorney also alluded to this. We've had 5 different appraisals on it from 2004. They actually came out and sent the first letters in June of 2004. But you can see that the property valuations have just been all over the place. And I realize, my father and I realized that we just wanted to buy the airport to buy us out. You need it. I don't want to have a right of flight. These surfaces that are required are going to allow planes to be within 10 feet of my house and my mother's house. I don't want that. That's just not acceptable. They're making my place, by putting these surfaces over there, they've made my place incompatible for residential use. It's just, with the noise, it's just not compatible with that. And it's devalued my property. There's nobody that I can sell this property to other than the airport because of these surfaces. Now, this is their new 2010 ALP, the most current one, and none of the surfaces up here have changed. But you can notice a new surface has popped up that is not even contained in your new easement that they have put in here. They've put in a new surface. So this is the one that my father and I were really concerned about. You can see that it's much wider than the approach surface, and it's lower. This is the one that puts it within 10 feet. And here's the design circular. So I'm not pulling this out of thin air. I'm not making it up. This is on the department's drawings. But the easement that you're looking for doesn't encompass this. So even if everything they say is correct, the FAA is going to require you to come back and get this surface at a later date. Once they figure out that, oh, we haven't required that surface yet, you're going to have to come back in for another easement. And I don't want that. 12 years is enough. I would like it to be done. I really would. So this is a sketch I've done, and you can see here's my mom's house, and there's my house. And here's that 40-to-1 surface, that new one that's come up on the drawings. And you can see it encompasses almost all of my property. And that 10 foot, that's less than you would let a building be from a roadway. And these are planes that can fly over there. Legally, a plane can fly within 10 feet of my house by that surface. And I'm not making it up. It's hard to see in this one because it's divided out, but that airplane went over my house. It's hard to sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning. When they put the ILS system in, now they can do night flights out there. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can get woke up by a plane coming over. So this, again, is another planning document that the department put out. You can see I've highlighted a couple areas. Here's where my property is. It's in this A zone. This is RR5 is prohibited. So they know that the entirety of my property is incompatible for residential use. And this is another design guide from the FAA that if you don't have the zoning authority, you must be prepared to purchase it. And again, this is zoning for incompatible land uses. When it's incompatible, height restrictions and zoning ordinances are not acceptable. They're not adequate to provide the right of flight that's required. And this is just per the airport or FAA requirements. But again, we've had staff tell us, well, the rest of your property is unnecessary. I think I've pretty much shown that it is necessary. If you don't get it now, you're going to be coming back here later. This was a presentation that the department put on. This was January 9th, 2007 to the City Council. And even in their own title to the City Council, they say that zoning ordinances are inadequate to protect it. And you can see there's that little yellow line, and my property's right there, right in the middle of the red. So I wanted to just take a minute to talk about the Uniform Act, because you guys have got money from, or I should say, Salt Lake City has got money from the FAA to do all these expansions, as Joel has talked about. So with that, you're required to comply with the Uniform Act by that grant. And so you've got several grant requirements to do that. Now, your attorneys have argued, I don't know if staff's told this, your attorneys are arguing you don't have to follow the Uniform Act. So if his motions in the court on Monday are followed through with, you're going to be in violation of the Uniform Act and potentially losing these grants and be in breach of contract. So these are the grants that you have, and from the FAA, and what the descriptions of those are, and you have copies of those. So, and this is what happens when they come in and you're in breach of contract, they can take the property from you. Okay. The last thing that I wanted to say is when they talk about fair value, this was in June 15th, 2007. This was after it was already voted to condemn my property, where I wasn't able to speak. They offered the 281 there for the easement, the same one that is in your letter that was dated March 15th, 2019. But they did offer us 1.8 million. And they had an appraisal for it. But I want you to notice that this was the 2005-08 budget, and that number exactly matches. Now, I know what my property was worth, and it was worth a lot more than 1.8 million in 2007. And I met with the appraisers and went through that with them. But we just got the budget number offered to us. It wasn't a fair valuation. I mean, it is exactly the same number. And it is not just, I haven't just pulled the number out. This is for TVA land acquisition. All right. And the next year, it was 3 million. But in the response to the June 15th meeting, we had offered that to the Department of Airports. We had made an offer to sell our property and just told them, buy us out and we're done. So with that, the attorney, as he said, it's dismissed, and our property has increased in value now. So to offer the same valuation that you did 12 years ago, I think is bad faith, because we can develop it further. My brother and I have been working on it. As soon as this is dismissed, or it has been dismissed, we're filing and rezoning our property. But really, we just want to be done. The best thing that you could do, I mean, you've got an inadequate easement that the airport's asking for. The solution that fits the city, and it also matches our interest, the best interest would be just for the city to buy our property out. I mean, I'm not looking to stand in the way. I just want to be treated fairly. I just want just compensation for my property. That's it. Thank you.
I believe we're at time, but I would like to ask that you please give me 3 to 5 minutes. I will be brief, I will be direct, I will be to the point, and I don't want to occupy any more time than I have to. My name is Dick Coons Jr. My father's name...
First off, your internal clock is remarkable, because your presentation was like spot on the 20 minutes. Very nice. Okay, good job.
We've really tried to comply.
No, it's great. So, yeah, if you need an additional 5 minutes or so,
it's greatly appreciated.
Welcome to it.
And I'm here today. Typically, my father would be here, but he passed away July of 2013. I'm here to represent him, and hopefully I make his argument just, and I'll move from there. I'm going to put I'm not as precise as my brother with the PowerPoints, so I am going to just give you a little sketch here that I want you to kind of look at while I'm talking. If you look at that sketch, everything that's in purple is owned by Salt Lake City Department of Airport, or Salt Lake City Corporation. They have fee title to the ground. They own the ground. Everything, there's no dimensions on this drawing, but it's reasonably to scale. The yellow is what's proposed for the easement. The yellow, the highlighted yellow portion. The orange is the transition surfaces that we believe that they have made an error on, because they're condemning for an approach surface while ignoring the departure surfaces that are required by the exact same table that defines the approach surfaces. These surfaces represent the ability for aircraft to operate up to 162 miles an hour approaching or departing the airport within 35 feet of the ground. The blue portion represents an area, roughly by calculations, that's about 40 feet above the ground. So if you'll humor me for just a moment. I'm stopping at 35 feet. We're talking about an easement to allow airplanes moving at upwards of 162 miles an hour, legally operating, motorized airborne vehicles operating this close to the ground. Legally. Now, if you reel that back in to 14 feet.
No,
No, you got to do it manually.
it's manual. Yeah, it's one of Dad's old school ones.
I brought my dad's tape measure so that he could be here in spirit. 14 feet. It is. The back corner of that property, where it borders on the left-hand side, that is where the surface is 14 feet from the ground. They don't want the property. They want to operate planes, give legal right to operate planes this far from the ground at upwards of 162 miles an hour. It's not reasonable. We get it. It's not reasonable. We don't want to be in the way. Now, will you reel it into 10 feet, please?
Fishing expedition.
This is how far they want to allow those same planes to legally fly within my mother's house. This is the distance at 162 miles an hour by their own drawings. It's inadequate. All we're asking is please take the ability for them to negotiate away from the Department of Airports and appoint somebody to buy our property. That's all we want. We get it. We understand. We're on board. We're engineers. My brother's been an engineer, went to school, traditionally educated, been an engineer, licensed in Utah for 20 years. I've been in the engineering field and been licensed for the last 15, spent 30 years. We understand the policies. We get it. They're making a mistake. And we're here to make the argument that you don't have to agree with us, but be reasonable. We're talking about safety of people and property on the ground.
Just to
Okay.
conclude, we
Do you
would
wanna take-
ask
yeah, go ahead.
that the resolution be amended to require a total take of the property. That be done. If the parties can't agree on the value, that's what the courts are for, to argue what is the just compensation to which they're entitled. But that really is the appropriate thing to do here, not to try and take this property in piecemeal by avigation easement after avigation easement after avigation easement. This property, according to the city's own records, is incompatible for residential use. Take the entire property. Let's fight over value, which is typically what you do in an eminent domain case, and let's be on with this. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you all for your presentation. Thank you particularly for watching the time as diligently as you all did. Amy, I'm going to look to you for a motion.
Thank you, Chair Luke. I would move that we move into a closed session in regards to pending litigation and advice of counsel.
Motion by Councilmember Fowler, second. Yeah.
Sorry, let me turn that on. Do we need a motion to close the public comment period?
I don't think we had.
It just says that on the sheet, so I just want to make sure.
Okay.
We check
okay.
the boxes.
So yes. So Councilmember Mendenhall.
I move that the council close the public property owner comment period and enter into closed session to discuss acquisition of real property and pending and reasonably imminent litigation.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Mendenhall, second by Councilmember Fowler. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Now,
We need to roll call that.
For that one or for?
Because I moved
No,
that we
to the-
enter into
to the
closed session. Or
Okay.
that was part of
That
the
was part of it?
motion.
Okay. Councilmember Wharton? Councilmember
Aye.
Mendenhall? Councilmember Rogers? Councilmember Fowler? Councilmember Valdemoros? And I'm an aye. We are in closed session. So, council, let's meet in the back conference room for a minute.
you.
reconvene our work session. And at this point, I'll look to Councilmember Fowler for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the resolution and also move to encourage the parties to negotiate in good faith for the city to acquire the real property.
Motion by Councilmember Fowler,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Mendenhall. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. We will now look to our executive director for a report and announcements.
Just one item, and that is that on Tuesday, when you have your council meeting, and you'll be looking at adoption of a resolution, and a Nobel Peace Prize winner will be in attendance, and the mayor's office is going to have a reception just prior. The mayor will be out of town, so they've invited the council, of course, to act in a hosting capacity. So,
Great. Any other, let's see, I'll look to my vice chair. Any announcements from the chair, vice chair? Okay, I don't have anything either. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.